First up is Sorry Baby. Sorry Baby, directed by Eva Victor, written by Eva Victor, starring Eva Victor. you get a trend here. I was not familiar with her, but I guess she's done a lot of pretty current comedic work. I think a lot of it has been online or in smaller roles, but this is her breakout movie. Eva Victor plays Agnes, and this is a movie at first glance and in format that would seem like, oh, this is a very indie drama kind of movie. And in many ways it is, but to me, of the best sort. Because an indie drama movie can be well acted, well written, really emotionally affecting, but it can be really dry and really dour and really, I don't know, just not full of life. And when I describe the basis of this movie, it might seem like that. But the special sauce of this movie is just the style and the humor and the amazing interactions that go on throughout this movie that really, really, I think, give it life above and beyond like kind of your well done indie dramas of the time. This is probably, I didn't look up the description as far as what it's categorized as, but I would probably say a dark indie comedy drama is probably the subgenre this would fall into. Basic concept is Agnes, like I said, once again played by Eva Victor. She is living in a small house, New England. She is postgraduate. In fact, she is now just getting her professorship. And when the movie starts, her longtime friend, Lydia, played by Naomi Ackie, is coming to visit her after, I don't know, it's been like 4 or 5 years since they graduated. And they both have found their lives. And Agnes's friend is doing well, but really happy to see her. And they're having this reconnection. You get the sense very early, they really have a great chemistry together. You can tell they just love each other. They're catching up, all this kind of stuff. But you get the idea that Agnes is a bit isolated. Agnes is a bit maybe depressed. There's a lot of talk about, like, Agnes will keep saying things like, I'm not going to do anything to myself. Everything's fine. Like indicating that might have been on the table at some point. And you get the idea that something bad happened and you're not sure what. You're not sure if there was a death in the family or a former love of hers left her or died. You just know that there's some kind of pain in Agnes's life that is weighing on her in some way, and you're not quite getting the full picture. And that's your beginning chapter of this. Also in this beginning chapter, you have a meeting with a bunch of their old college friends. They all get together, and there's very interesting interactions between all of them at kind of this casual dinner where you get the feeling that there has been some kind of acrimony and maybe even competition or something between her and this one other woman, one of her peers named Natasha, played by Kelly McCormick. You may not know Kelly McCormick. Kelly McCormick, Eric and Greg should remember from a really cool, weird little indie movie called Sugar Daddy. And she was the star of that one, and I believe the writer of that one too. So it's interesting to have such an unique voice playing a relatively minor character here, but having a real impact on Agnes's life as the story goes on. So you're kind of getting settled into what I just described, and you're like, okay, this movie's going to be following Agnes and getting to discover kind of what is currently weighing on her, all of that kind of stuff. And to some degrees it does do that, but what it does is it does some time jumping, so it ends up being in chapters. And I should have written down the chapters because they're odd little phrases like the year that something bad happened, or the day that I was happy, or things like that. So after about 20 minutes or so that I described, all that kind of stuff, you jump back in time. She is now just about to finish college. She is roommates with Lydia, the person we already met. And you're like, uh-oh, we're going to see what happened. And we do. And I'm not going to describe how we see it, but we see it in a very subtle way. We see it coming. But the way it's presented to us is very, very subtle. But then we really get to watch the aftermath of a trauma that happens to Agnes. Once again, you're saying, like, Bruce, I thought you said this was a vibrant, not just a dour indie drama kind of movie. And it's true, it's not. Because once the trauma happens, and we know what the trauma is very clearly, it faces it very clearly, you would expect a movie to be, like I said, very serious and dour based on what the trauma is, and very emotional. And though it hits some of those notes, what is, to me, really interesting is that the rest of the movie kind of is showing how does Agnes claw her way back to a version of normal life, and how she does it with this kind of really sardonic and interesting sense of humor, and really slowly finding her way to really re-engage with life. And we do jump around in time several times, several chapters. And throughout this movie, they're not even vignettes, but they're individual scenes or moments. Actually, I'd say scenes where the writing and the interactions are just so sharp and so engaging. I'm not even going to say what they are because I don't want to give stuff away. I think the experiencing is great. But there's there's a scene with Agnes and Lydia when Agnes goes and visits a doctor, and that scene is amazingly played out. There's a scene where Agnes has to get selected for jury duty. Once again, amazingly acted, amazingly written, and just the way it progresses is never exactly what you're expecting. There are interactions, like I said before, with the Kelly McCormick character, Natasha, once again, goes ways you don't exactly expect, and it's really, really amazing and engaging. And then one other thing is, there is a moment in this movie, there's a scene in the poster you see with her holding a cat up, and it might even look like, oh, this is a movie about a woman and a cat. Well, it's really not, but there's a whole reason she gets a cat. That scene does happen in the movie, and the ongoing sequence with her and that cat, and the cat ends up being her life, but there's the opening sequence where she first gets the cat, and an ongoing sequence with her, including a scene where she has to talk with a convenience store clerk while she's hiding the cat in her coat. Once again, amazing, humorous, heartfelt. It's the kind of thing that the person that is Eva Victor, I think is the only person who could pull it off, because there's just a level of balance between the humor, the quirkiness without being like cloying. It's always grounded. It's always like it's tinged in a little bit of sadness, and just she's on the edge of being unhinged at all times, but at the same time you're always rooting for her. And there's one other scene, and once again, all these scenes aren't telling you a thing about the movie. You're just like, okay, there's a scene with a whatever, there's a scene with a cat. But I think the sign of a great movie for me is when you think back on it, you could think back on 3 or 4 or 5 scenes, and every time you think about it, I want to see that scene again. And whether it's an action movie or a horror movie or a comedy or whatever it is, if you have a movie where you think back on 3 or 4 scenes that you really want to see again, that's a great sign for a movie. The other scene I wanted to mention was you have a kind of almost a cameo, but it's an extended cameo. It's like probably about a 10-minute scene with John Carroll Lynch. And if John Carroll Lynch, he was the husband of Marge in Fargo. Long-time character actor. You've seen him many, many times. And I feel like he was cast in this movie probably based on Fargo, because he brings that sort of energy, which is absolutely human empathy machine that he was in Fargo, where he was what you see is what you get. A real caring person that cared about the person they were with. And in this case, he is an absolute stranger to Eva's character. That would be Agnes. He's an absolute stranger to Agnes. They meet based on just pure chance in a really offhand way. And they end up having an extended interaction that is just wonderful. And then there's a final scene, which once again, I won't get into what that is exactly. But once again, it's perfect pitch, note perfect. It's very subtle. It's very quiet, but it's exactly what you need at the end of the movie. And it's exactly what Agnes needs at the end of the movie. Wonderful movie. I cannot praise this movie high enough. If it looks like, I think the problem is it's hard to sell. It's hard to describe as what is this movie about. And it's hard to, from the poster, get a feel of what the movie is about. I think that the only caveat I would have is that there are certain kind of traumas, and I don't want to describe what the traumas are because that would give away a moment in the movie that you kind of need to have. But if you are triggered by certain sort of traumas that can happen to people, you may not want to see this movie. It isn't violent. It isn't explicit in any way, but it's emotionally explicit. You know what I mean? Like emotionally, you will feel it. And that's a sign of a movie that's doing its job. I think it's a fantastic movie. This is a 5-star movie for me. It'll definitely be in the running of one of my favorite movies of the year. We'll see when all's said and done and I go back through my 30 or so movies that I've got tagged as my favorites of the year, whether this will drop into the top 10, but it could very easily do so. Once again, sorry baby. If you have HBO Max, super accessible right now. I would say if you're in for something that's not too, like I said, once again, not too heavy and like it doesn't weigh on you, but it has serious, heavy issues dealt with in a very unusually, sardonically comedic way with a really, really singular voice that I'm looking very forward to seeing other things from, then Sorry Baby may be for you. Check it out. 5 stars for me.
Hey guys, thanks so much for watching this video. For more movie and television reviews and interviews, please subscribe to my Deepest Dream channel. Like, comment, share, subscribe. And as always, thanks so much for your support. Take care.